What do we know right now about, I guess, what he's saying and how he's going to defend himself?
For starters, he's pleaded not guilty. He is going to be released today. $100 million bond, which sounds like he has to front up about $5 million in cash, secured by 2 properties. So he will be able to get out. He will not be spending the night in jail. But this is a dramatic turn of events. We are aware that Bill Hwang and his team had been talking with the Justice Department in recent weeks and months. In fact, a meeting earlier this week. So they clearly were not expecting prosecutors to show up and take him away and arraign him in court today.
So well, what kind of message does this send, I'm wondering? Because, you know, on one hand, you have separate investigations going on that do involve the banks, but on the other hand, you have this indictment that says that the banks were also misled. So what position does that leave the banks in? Leave the banks in at the end of the day?
One has to assume for the prosecutors to be able to make their case, they really had to show who were the victims on the other side. And U.S. Attorney Damien Williams at his press conference said that this was an incident that had a lot of people hurt by the events of what happened in March 2021. And prominent among them, and this is something the U.S. Attorney did highlight, were Wall Street banks, because we know banks not only in the U.S. but across the world were nursing about $10 billion in losses.
So I do want to go back to what you just said about the idea that he was talking with each other. At least that's what we've reported. We do know that there are at least 2 other folks involved in this who we know are cooperating with prosecutors. And I wonder if this is an issue where maybe Bill Hwang and his team didn't get to prosecutors fast enough in order to maybe blunt the impact of this.
Even if they got fast enough, one has to assume that for prosecutors, Bill Hwang was the big fish. And what we cannot forget, and we have to assume that was part of the pressure playing on prosecutors, was Bill Hwang is someone, when he ran his own hedge fund with outside money about 10 years ago, was charged with an insider trading case where his firm had to plead guilty. Since then, he reinvented himself. His family office went from $1 billion in March 2020 to have net worth. Essentially, Bill Hwang's fortune rocketed up to $35 billion by March 2021. And then you saw the collapse that not only affected him, but a number of other shareholders and a number of other companies in the market. So clearly you had a situation where they had to act, and especially someone who seems to have had a prior, even if it's technically not a prior.
Further headlines, of course, that court appearance has adjourned, but they are both due back in court May 19. So we'll continue to get perhaps maybe further details then. What further details are you looking for?
If you read through the entire complaint, a lot of the folks in the markets are trying to figure out exactly how they can turn the screws on Bill Hwang. He did build up outrageous size and position in a number of these stocks. That itself does not sound criminal. So they'll really have to make a case as to why trading more than 10-15% of a stock's daily volume is wrong. Because he was trading a lot on swap, as we know, he believed he did not have to disclose his position when he got to above 5%. How does the government make the case that that was wrong as well? Do they show the intent? And of course, the fact that he was lying to the banks.
Yeah. And remember when we had, remind me, the Sri Lankan
Raj
Rajaranam here, and he was talking about, and this is securities fraud, and it might be a little bit different, but with insider trading, how complicated it is because the lines aren't clearly set, and so the lines can get blurred, and you can read it in any different direction.
Well, I'm glad you brought up Raj. I mean, his case is
sorry, I had a mind blank.
Yeah, his case is a little bit different because that was more straight insider trading, but it does get to this idea here, I think, Sri, of this idea of how successful the prosecutors have been in being able to prosecute these types of Wall Street cases. I mean, it does get very complicated, and a lot of things that you say that Bill Hwang did, there are a lot of, frankly, money managers out there who say, maybe they won't say it publicly, but they're probably doing the same thing. Yes. And they don't think that they're breaking the law, just to be clear.
Yes, but when you have such a spectacular collapse, that will force a lot of people to ask questions, and people will not be satisfied unless there is clarity at the end of it. And prosecutors really want to make an example of someone. And if you were to get Raj Rajaratnam on the phone today, he would encourage you to read his book, Uneven Justice.